So a lot of you guys liked my last Destiny 2 hot takes video, so I decided to do another one, including some of the hot takes that you guys left in the comments section of that video. So be sure to comment your own hot takes down below to be featured in the next episode, because I do take them from both YouTube and Twitter. And we're going to start off with the top comment from that last video, which is, the sundial was a good activity, but it suffered from being released when Menagerie was in the game, so people just compared it to that. I think it's fair to say that Sundial was decent, but it for sure was a less fun version of Menagerie, like with the previous season when we had Vex Offensive, which was, again, just a less exciting Menagerie. So it's easy to make comparisons. And the same can really be said about almost every single seasonal activity. I mean, most of them are essentially just a slightly different variation of Menagerie, which brings me to the second hot take that is related to that idea, which is, the Menagerie was one of the worst things to happen to the Destiny seasonal model. It's a great activity, but for some seasons there have been copies with slight alterations. Now, was the Menagerie the worst thing to happen? Not necessarily at first, but Bungie found something players liked with the Menagerie and proceeded to just replicate it, with very little deviation. And the result has been that we really have been playing copies of the Menagerie for the last 3 years now. And in some ways they're even downgrades from that original Menagerie. At least for me, Axis is the best raid boss in all of Destiny's history. From the triumphant soundtrack to the feel of pure action when blasting all your ammo into the boss, nothing can compare to that feeling. Massively agree with this one. While Wrath of the Machine isn't my overall favorite raid, it certainly is the most replayable for me, and Axis is a big reason for that. There's just so much movement and chaos, yet harmony with the mechanics, especially Axis Challenge Mode, which I believe is the best fight in the entire franchise, and that music really is unforgettable too. The Crown of Sorrow boss Galron was one of the best raid boss encounters, required excellent team communication. I know there's a pretty even split in the community of those who hate Crown of Sorrow and those who love it, and while I can't say I loved the entire raid, mainly due to the intro encounters, I do gotta say that the boss fights were certainly some of my favorite in D2 raiding, especially Galron. Like they said in the tweet, it does require excellent team communication, and that's what I love about it. Everyone had a crucial role, and if runs weren't going smoothly, it could come down to one player just not performing. So I liked the fluidity and the amount of communication and teamwork it demanded. It was a great boss fight, great mechanics. I really do miss this raid and wish I could still play it again. Season of the Drifter was actually pretty good compared to the seasons we get now. So as much as I love the Forsaken Year in Destiny 2, I really can't say that I particularly loved Season of the Drifter. Gambit Prime I thought was a downgrade from the original Gambit mode, although it did bring some interesting ideas and I did like going for the armor sets. I mean, once I got that Invader set, I felt like a god with the perks that it granted. Reckoning was a cool idea, but not really my thing either. It was challenging, which I liked, but I wasn't a fan of the gameplay loop of doing a few games of Gambit, then doing a run or two of Reckoning, and just repeating that. It just wasn't that great of a gameplay loop to me. As for if it's better than current seasons, I mean, that's completely subjective to your own opinions. I mean, we did get other things like Pinnacles and probably some better exotics back then, but I can say that from a gameplay perspective, I have enjoyed certain other seasons that we've gotten since Drifter more than Drifter itself. Festering Core was the best D2 strike we ever had, and it got removed after only 1 year. It's criminal. I partially agree with this one. I don't know if it's the best D2 strike, but it was a pretty good one. And in case you've forgotten about this strike because it was in the game for such a short time, I'll remind you. Festering Core was added in Shadowkeep and took place on Io. It actually had some decent mechanics throughout the mission, and had some great looking Vex environments infested with Taken. And with content vaulting coming in Beyond Light, it meant that this strike had a very small window of time to exist in the game, which is a shame. It really was a good one. Breakneck loaded question over Mountaintop Recluse. When it comes to which was more effective, I gotta give it to Mountaintop Recluse, but if it comes down to which was more fun, for me, I will agree that the Breakneck loaded question combo was my preference. In fact, Breakneck and loaded question might be my favorite loadout in Destiny 2's history. It was on par with the Fatebringer Blackhammer Gallahorn combo in D1 for me, before these weapons got sunset. And again, Mountaintop Recluse was a nasty combo, but I just had more fun with Breakneck and loaded. Io over the Dreaming City based on looks, atmosphere, and skybox. Definitely gonna disagree with this one. The Dreaming City is one of the best looking areas in the franchise, and Io was just a more bland version of Mars with a green tint, which makes sense considering Io was originally designed to be on Mars for Destiny 1, but the skybox was certainly pretty cool, I'll agree with that. Jotun is easily avoided in PvP if you're paying attention. You're getting caught off guard because you're tunnel visioned. I don't know how much I agree with this one. Partially, yes. The same could be said for literally any weapon in the game. You can outplay anything. But some weapons certainly are painful to play against, and for me, Jotun is one of them. Noobs can get easy kills with it, but they can be outplayed no problem. But in the hands of good PvP players, Jotun is definitely frustrating to me. Whisper of the Worm needs to be in the special slot. This has been a long debated topic, and I'm a bit torn on it. If it's going to stay in the heavy slot, I think it needs to revert back to its original design where it refunded ammo from thin air instead of your reserves. But if it doesn't see that change, then I think it should move to the special slot. Weapon crafting has ruined loot in Destiny. So I have a confession. I haven't crafted a single weapon since Witch Queen released, except for the ones that it forces you to do for the quest. I simply dislike weapon crafting in D2, so I don't engage with it. I find it ruins the loot grind aspect of the game, and replaces it with a more tedious and annoying grind. And I really think that the weapon crafting, since it's been added, has been a lose-lose system for the game, and would be happy to see it removed. Destiny 2 campaigns are cool, but I judge the quality of an expansion based on how it improves the overall core game. The campaign lasts a few days, the expansion lasts the entire year. I 100% agree with this one. That's really been my main problem with the Witch Queen because it had one of the best campaigns in the franchise's history. It really was great. And the raid was also fantastic. VOW is really high up there in my rankings for raids. But as a whole, the Witch Queen really didn't evolve the game enough in many other areas. Obviously, lack of core activities being a continued trend since Shadowkeep, but even other aspects of the game either became grindier or watered down, like the Throne World having less things to work towards and discover. The core of Destiny 2 either stayed the same or devolved, in my opinion. And for an expansion to really land for me, it's when it addresses pain points of the game and breathes life into all areas. And for me, Witch Queen didn't do that. Destiny 2 was a good game with good seasons last year. Beyond Light and Season of the Hunt were a rough start, but the rest was great. I still don't know if I would say it was better than Forsaken's year, but it felt a lot more consistent in quality. Now, as some of you know, I didn't play at all during the Beyond Light year. After that expansion released and was on its own not something I personally enjoyed, pair that with sunsetting and vaulting, it just turned me off entirely, and I had no desire to play the game at all during that year, which is why some of you will remember I took a break from YouTube entirely after Beyond Light, posting a few variety games here and there, but I didn't play Destiny for that entire year. Well, Witch Queen brought me back, and I enjoyed certain aspects of it, but the seasons have been pretty shoddy to say the least. And I have heard that people enjoyed Beyond Light seasons quite a lot, so I've heard this sentiment fairly often between my YouTube comments and hearing from others who played during that year. But I really want to hear from you guys on this one in the comments section. Was last year really a great seasonal content year? Hot take. Destiny 2. True. Level caps need to return to the game. I absolutely agree with this one. Ever since Shadowkeep introduced the artifact power, I've just hated it. The sense of this never-ending grind, like never being able to reach a cap, is just frustrating, and adding this artifact power grind wasn't done for the sake of players' enjoyment. It was so that you never felt like you were done at any point. It was done solely for the sake of player retention. And grinding power level past the gear cap is pretty much required now for Grandmaster content. I really think when Destiny focuses on horizontal progression, it's at its best, meaning things like meaningful grinds for loot drops or quests. But grinding for the sake of numbers going up, I feel like has run its course in this franchise, and maybe the power level should increase maybe once a year for expansions, but certainly not for seasons, and I would love to see the artifact power just be removed. I mean, one of the best updates in Destiny 1 was the Age of Triumph update, which focused on horizontal progression and updates to the core game in major ways. It added a bunch of new loot to chase, but the level cap did not increase at all. And it didn't need to increase when the rest of the content in the update expanded all areas of the horizontal progression. Farming pinnacles and prime engrams just needs to go, in my opinion. It had gotten old once we'd reached Season 6 of Destiny 2, and that same pinnacle and prime engram grind still exists today. Why? Well, we know why. It's to keep players on the hamster wheel. Destiny 1 strikes were way better than Destiny 2 strikes. Despite the grammatical errors here, I agree. There are some pretty good strikes in both games, and some of my favorites in D2 ended up getting vaulted, but even now there are still some pretty good ones. D1 strikes, however, are certainly much better in my opinion. They have a lot more unique encounters and even mechanics at times, and I think that's because in D1 Luke Smith said in a Vidoc that they wanted strikes to have even rooms that felt like a boss fight. Like areas leading up to the final boss were minigame puzzles or challenges, and then for the boss fights themselves to be more dynamic. So we got things like 2 boss fights in one, with opposite tactics fighting you, and other bosses mixing up their strategies at certain points of their health. Things like that. Forsaken Strikes actually had a similar style to the D1 strikes, which is why I think they were some of the better ones in the game. In Destiny 1, strikes feel like running dungeons to a degree. And in Destiny 2, a lot of them, not all, but a lot of them, feel like running through patrol zones, just mindlessly clearing ads. And you can't really turn your brain off as much in D1 strikes, which I really like. Destiny 2 BR mode, where it drops you and 99 other players into one big patrol zone, like the EDZ, but there's also lower leveled ads. Now this isn't really a hot take, just an idea that I thought was pretty cool, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts in the comments on this one, so I included it here. Now I'm not that big of a BR guy, I just don't find them to be that engaging long term, but Destiny 2 is inherently a looting game. And the idea of being dropped into a patrol map and looting from chests and high value targets, or doing public events for loot drops, and then having to use that loot to fight other players in the open world, could be a pretty interesting idea. But again, let me know your thoughts on this one in the comments. Festival of the Lost is Destiny 2's best event. Absolutely agree. No matter what state this game is in, I do find myself wanting to log in for Festival of the Lost because it's just got a great style to it. Halloween events are usually just my favorite in other games as well, like with Overwatch.
For tonight was the night of Junkenstein's revenge.
I really do miss the Haunted Forest though, because I found it to be much better than Haunted Lost Sectors. Eruption is worse than Rift. Is Eruption worse than Rift? No, I don't think so. The changes to Rift in Destiny 2 were for the worse in my opinion, like making it round based. I really don't know why it couldn't just flow like it did in D1, or be like Capture the Flag in Halo, so I really didn't like that change. And to be honest, I quite liked Eruption. It made PvP more fast-paced and intense, and I really do think it was a great addition for PvP. Now Bungie just needs to make it an option to play on its own at any given time. But that's going to be it for this video, guys. Leave your thoughts and hot takes in the comments down below. Be sure to check out the previous episode if you missed it, and I'll see you guys in the next one.